Well then, great. Hello everybody. Thank you so much for coming out today, and thank you very, very, very much for having me. It's an honor to be here. I am so grateful for all of your support over the years. It's been incredible, and I have a lot to share with you today. And I have a lot of information in a little bit of time, and we're going to absolutely have time for a Q&A after we're done talking. So just to give you a quick background on myself, my background is in housing and in the workforce, helping people get jobs, people underserved population. And then I moved on and started a national leadership consulting and training firm and have been working with leaders for over 25 years. And then I got tired of it. And I thought it was time to be more involved in my community. And when I first moved to New Mexico about 10 years, almost 11 years now, the first person I met had a very severe heroin addiction and came to me without hardly knowing me and came to me for help through withdrawals. And I had no idea where to turn because I was brand new to the state. So I had no contacts, nothing. And so I spent time doing research and trying to figure out how can I get this person into rehab quickly? Because when someone has an addiction and they finally get to that point where they say, I'm ready for rehab, you have to act fast because that mind can change quickly. And then, you know, I'm seeing heads nodding. You know what I'm talking about. When someone makes the decision to go, it could be a matter of minutes before they change their mind. And then they might not say yes again it could be years later, you know. So I scrambled. And over a couple of weeks, I was able to leave a lot of messages for a lot of organizations I was finding just online. And I was really discouraged because no one called me back. And I left a detailed message of, here's the problem, please call me immediately. 2 weeks later, someone called me back. And we still had to wait for a bed. So long story short, the person got into rehab, but I was left really discouraged. And I just became really passionate about it, and I don't know if any of you if you're the type where when you get an idea in your mind, you just have to run with it until you can see it to the end. So I sat down at my computer and I put together a business plan to put together an organization that filled the gaps, and that would be able to help people faster. And then after I got done doing the business plan, I looked at it and I said, I can't do this. I just moved here. I don't have the resources. Like, this isn't going to work, maybe later. So I put it away and forgot about it. 4 years later, I was just flipping through different ads randomly, and I came across an ad for the Pathways Shelter saying, we are opening a shelter, we need a director, and I don't know what happened, but it grabbed my heart. And here I am. But what was really interesting was about 4 months later, I accidentally stumbled on that business plan. And I read the business plan, and I looked, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is the shelter. It was just weird how that all connected, and here I am. So that's a little bit about me. I want to get more into talking about what we're going to do today. So I want to share with you some of the dynamics around homelessness. You know, why does it happen? What's going on that this is such a chronic situation in our state? So we'll talk about the history of it. We'll talk about some of the driving forces of homelessness. We'll talk about Pathways itself, Española Pathways Shelter, some of its history and how it's become a community hub for crisis management and triage in the Española area. We'll talk about some of the results that we've gotten, some of the challenge that we're having. For any of you who have been following us and you're curious about what's going on with our special use permit, I'll touch on that and share with that. And then we'll talk about how you can help. And I'm open to any questions at all that you may have. So with that, let's talk about homelessness in New Mexico, northern New Mexico in particular. First of all, it's not a new thing. We've heard several rumors saying things like, Pathways Shelter brought in homelessness to our community. Thank you for laughing at that, because we laugh at it too. It's silly. No, homelessness goes back to the days of colonial times when there were land displacements, created tremendous cultural trauma, Then there was a jump later on when institutions started releasing patients and closing down. We have an area, especially in northern New Mexico, where there's limited access to health care, to jobs, limited access, limited affordable housing. And there's a very huge problem of generational poverty and generational addiction. We also have housing structures that are aging. I mean, there's a really big lack of development, of housing development in the area. And with that, the housing that's left is, a lot of places are falling apart. There's a lot of condemned homes throughout Rio Arriba County. We have a lot of people that live in those condemned homes. Once they're condemned, they have no place to go, so they stay. Or you have people that are on the streets that see a condemned home that eventually move into it because it's shelter and there's nowhere else to go. So it's really rough. I mean, at one point, we had an encampment in our parking lot. You might have heard about it or seen it. And that was because there was a closing of a couple of apartment complexes. Not just an apartment building, but complexes in our area. And people had no place to go. And so that wasn't something that we invited or encouraged on our property. But we just felt humanitarian-wise, we had no choice but to help. And to help not by just letting people stay there, but let them stay there while we work with people one by one to help them move off the property. Since then, that encampment has been disbanded. But that's an example of when there's no place to go, people will go to desperate measures to make sure their needs are filled. And one of the advantages of having shelters in a community is that we provide services that take away the need to commit some of the crimes. And, and we see that on a regular basis. Another challenge is that the rents are increasing in the area all over. Nationwide, it's not a new problem. But what's happening also is that the wages are staying the same. So there's people that are making the same amount of money that they were making 5 years ago. Excuse me. And, as a result, things are becoming more and more unaffordable. So we are watching an increase in homelessness. So the poverty rate in New Mexico is very high. It's among the top 3 in the nation, and it's been for a while. Rio Arriba County is among the highest in the state. And this is something that we would love to see it go down, but if things continue going the way they're going, it's not something that's going to decrease quickly. We saw an uptick in homelessness between 2022 and 2024, and that was because of 3 really powerful reasons. We had COVID, which displaced a lot of people as people were losing their jobs. We also had the fentanyl explosion, and that created an entirely new landscape with drug use that we saw on the streets. And it also caused people to lose their jobs, lose their families, lose everything that they had, and increase the homelessness. And in addition to that, that was the time frame where the apartments were closed down. It was also the time frame where there were encampments that were shut down as well. And so, with that, you have this growing increase in homelessness. There's a count that's done every year. Excuse me. And last year in 2024, the count showed that at any given time there was 3,850 people in New Mexico experiencing homelessness. And out of that, 70% were living in cars, uninhabitable places. That number, we saw the numbers for Española specifically, and we had to say those are extremely low numbers. The PIT came out again, and there's another report that's saying homelessness is decreasing, which is another thing that we're certainly not seeing. So now we have a little coalition that is working together to get the numbers straight so we can show the severity of the homelessness, because it's more than what meets the eye. And so there's a lot of factors that go into homelessness. So I'll share with you what we're doing. Española Pathways Shelter was founded in 2019, and our mission was to provide pathways and essential services for people that are unhoused. We had no idea how much we would grow. We've been through many challenges over the years, and we've had significant growth, very rapid growth over the years as well. And I'll share with you where we're at now. And some of that rapid growth has caused us challenges because, I mean, if you've ever owned a business, you know that if your business grows too fast, and all of a sudden you turn around and say, oh my gosh, I don't have the capacity to handle this, and you're in a jam, right? You can lose your business because of it. And so we've seen the same thing. So as our organization grew, and our organization grew because the need grew. And as the needs grow, we find ourselves in a position of saying, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? We need to double our staff. That's hard to get funding for. You know, so we're always we always like to say that we're learning how to fly the plane and we're flying it all at the same time, because you can't prepare for some of these growth spurts that happen in the environment, really. So here's our little timeline of what we've been through. In year one, 2020, we were founded in 2019. In 2020, January 6th, I'll never forget it, we opened. And just to share a quick story that Mara will be very well aware of, because we went through this together, I was hired in the end of December. It was like right after, I think it was the day after Christmas. Excuse me. And I inherited an empty building and a little itty-bitty budget and a goal. And so we thought that, you know, me and the board thought that opening in about 6 months would be realistic. We'll put our plans together. 6 days later, there was a fire in one of those abandoned houses, and it displaced 10 homeless people. And one of our members of the board was driving through town and just happened to see the fire and saw the 10 people standing on the corner with the little belongings that they can grab from the home in tears. And so they scooped them up and called me and said, we're going to go to the shelter and open it. And I said, we have an empty building. And did I mention that this empty building was under tremendous construction at the time? We had no heat, no hot water. We had electricity in like a very small section of the area. You know, and they said, we can't leave them there. It was the week that the temperatures dropped single digits, January 6th. And I just said, well, if we open, we can't close. And so we opened, and our open date was January 6th instead of April. And we had no staff. Mara came and did overnights for us, helped me do some hiring and put our policies and procedures together. It was amazing. So, and then we finally got staff, and within 3 months, COVID hit. And so we had to close because we didn't have the facility and structure, because when we opened as a warming center. That was what we were zoned for based on the limited ability that we had in the building. So we had to close down and provide services in our parking lot. And so we survived COVID. Our mission was to get people off of the streets, to keep the community safe. We didn't have one case of COVID that entire first year. And so we got through COVID with lots of COVID funding, which enabled us to purchase the motel across the street, which was phenomenal, because that turned into the next year. What we did was we renovated that and turned it into the first transitional housing unit that was in Espanola. It's still there today. It's called Eagle Village. It's actually under another huge construction project right now. So in year 2021, we opened the Transitional Housing Program, and that was phenomenal. And this worked with a different client that we would see normally in the shelter. This worked more with people that were in recovery already and needing just a little extra support for, to help their recovery along. And I'll go into details in a minute with details on the services that we provide. So in year 3, we then were able to purchase our shelter building, and we became landlords. And so that's been very, very helpful to our funding, where we got money from the state and was able to purchase it. And then the income from the tenants has been instrumental in our operations. And we do have an agreement with the state that all the money from our tenants goes directly into our operations and maintenance for the building. So that's been fabulous. In year 2023, so in 2023, by now we have COVID has ended. We've had people coming to us in our parking lot. We had no choice but to start providing day services. And those day services are still functioning now. and they include essential services that people need to just get through the day.
Hours a week as the coordinator for the Interfaith Coalition on Homelessness. This is a small, it's a young group. We started just 16 months ago, and 4 of us who had been doing collection drives during the winters for the Pathways Shelter said, what if we really started to think bigger? Could we get more congregations than our few to together say, we really would like to try to have impact on reducing homelessness in Española. And so we've gone from 3 congregations back then to 13 congregations at this point, 10 of them in Los Alamos, 3 in Española. And it's been quite a journey over 16 months. We knew from the very start that there was a tremendous amount that we really, really didn't understand about homelessness. And so that we better do a lot of learning before we tried to take on any projects. So over about 6 months, we talked to roughly 15 different organizations, most of them in Española, to learn from them what was working, what wasn't working, what are the gaps they're experiencing. And that was extremely helpful. And it also, we knew that we needed to be humble, that there was a strong tendency for people predominantly from Los Alamos County to go in and say, we know what you need, let us help you. So we've really worked hard not to go that route. But there's now about 20 people involved in our 3 teams and our steering committee that are doing work every month, sometimes multiple times a week. There's about 60 people on my email list now who are connected in one way or other with our work. So it's really come quite a long ways. The handout that you were given is a progress sort of report on what all we've already accomplished, what we're working on, what are our long-term projects. And I thought it would probably just be better to give you those rather than and let you take it home and study it. The quiz will be, I understand, next month. But I'd rather you have that. And let me just talk a bit about the bigger picture. That we've really had to evolve a lot in our understanding of all these complexities that Dena's been hitting on in terms of what does homelessness really need. Homelessness is not this. Homelessness is this. There's a whole lot to understand. And about midpoint in this process for us, we learned that the hospital is opening this huge clinic to greatly expand treatment for addiction disorders in Española area. And it's going to be so big that it's going to serve all the surrounding counties. Their capacity to treat patients is 1,900 people a year. And they're not even the only ones. There are 4 other entities in Española that are also doing this, just on a smaller scale. So the capacity for addiction treatment now, starting really probably before this month is over, is going to be way higher than the past. And so when we learned about that, it was like, okay, there's a real bright light there at the end of the tunnel that we can hold on to. But we also learned that there's 5 municipalities in Española. You're looking at 2 counties, 2 pueblos, and the city of Española. Think of the challenges if Los Alamos County had 5 municipalities that all had to work together, right? And you've got ethnic mixes, and you've got, all these other historical issues. So it was just this deepening of our understanding of why things are as they are. And then coming from my medical background, it also has just really been important to just keep remembering that addictions are a true brain hijacking disorder. Once somebody has gone down that path, whatever the reasons are, and there's a whole lot of reasons, their brain has been hijacked, and it's going to be extremely hard for them to undo that. It's a true disorder. They didn't realize where they were going to end up, but that's where they are. And so it just helps us stay compassionate, I think. I want to focus on the organizing principles because we're different, I think, than a lot of other organizations. Again, I mentioned the humility that I think we've worked hard to keep front and center, the continuous learning that we feel like is important and has served us well. There's even though there's all these complexities, I think it would have been real easy to say, well, this is just too complicated, it's too foreign, there's nothing we can really do, we don't know what to do. Well, we've just really worked hard not to have that grab us, to just keep saying, how can we be impactful with what we know and not be, going too far beyond what makes sense. And this is where our partners come in, because we really wanted to have this from the start be, we are working with partners who've been in the Valley for a long time and understand the issues far better than us. And together we can make a difference. And so those have been extremely valuable. Over time, it's been helpful to me to sort of come up with a little mantra that we're supporters, we're catalysts, and we're advocates. And each one of those roles is part of what we do. We've been very clear from the beginning that we were not going to be primarily focused on fundraising. That if we focused on fundraising, that would become probably our main focus. And that might do a lot of good, but it wouldn't be near as galvanizing. It wouldn't be near as valuable in the long haul for all of us who want to actually get a lot more involved in exactly the kinds of work that needs to be done in Española. So we sometimes do have to do some fundraising because some things do cost money, but we've kept that on the back burner for the most part. This is definitely an interfaith group, and so the focus there is that we have these shared deep values around promoting compassion, justice, and wise action. And it's really heartwarming to see 13 different congregations, people being able to work together because that we all know that we share those deep values. And so it's also meant building bridges between congregations, people who never knew each other before. And then there's the trickiness of learning, in this congregation, things can be done this way, but don't try to do that way in that congregation. They won't relate to that at all. So I've had to do a lot of that sort of learning. A big goal, though, from the very start was how do we do what I think, and I think a bunch of people think is long overdue, which is build bridges between our county and Española Valley. Meaningful bridges that will last. And in the process of doing that, there's no way to really know where that might lead. But in a year, it might lead to something we never expected that's good. In 3 years, it might lead to something else that's really good. So you just got to get the bridges built first. And we're now well connected with a dozen different entities in the Valley who we have great respect for what they're doing. They appreciate what we're doing. It's just been a marvelous bridge building process. So I want you to just imagine the kind of stuff that I imagine every now and then that just really energizes me. I want you to imagine 2 years from now that this coalition has added 6 more congregations, maybe 3 from Los Alamos County, maybe 3 more from the Valley. We're up to 19 congregations. Those congregations are knowing more and more about what we do. About 50 people from Los Alamos County have said, I really want to get personally involved. How can I volunteer? What can I do to help? And they've seen that there's 5 or 10 things that they can volunteer to plug themselves into. When I mentioned gaps a bit ago, one of the huge gaps that kept coming up when we talked to organizations on the ground was we really need a transportation system that will make it very easy for people to get to all of the health care services that they need. People who are unhoused, people with addiction disorders, people with disabilities, people who don't have a car, people whose daughter who has a car is at work. There's so many different people who need a better way to get to health care transportation. But especially if you're going to lower homelessness rates, this is critical. So imagine that being in place. What we've envisioned is a healthcare transport system that would run 7 days a week, all day long, making a loop through all the sort of major parts of town and stopping at the front door of each of these healthcare facilities, including the pharmacies, including the counselor's office, and would have a peer support person on each bus that would be there to be a resource, would be there to help the people with mental health conditions, be there to help the people who are going into withdrawal. You know, the driver can just drive. So imagine that being in place 2 years from now. I like thinking of how many people, how many families in Española Valley would be talking about the recovery stories that are now growing in numbers and what that's doing to healing families, healing individuals, getting people where they can work again. All of that just would create this new sense of hope that has been so hard to find for so long. I mean, it comes up and then it gets down, and I know you have seen it in spades, Dena. Crime rates going down, overdose rates going down. They have 4 times the level of overdoses per capita that the nation has. You know, there's tremendous room for improvement. If we can lower that to twice the amount, same as the national level. I mean, you know, these are kinds of things that New Hope would be all about. Imagine a few journalists starting to say, look at this place. This place was in real trouble. Look what they've accomplished in 2 years. Stories starting to show up in outlets around the state, maybe even outside the state, about this amazing community that's turning itself around. What we've learned, too, is that there's all these great frontline organizations. McCurdy Ministries now has a whole family resource center, the Pathways Shelter, Inside Out Recovery, the Mountain Center. There's a bunch of them that have been doing good work for quite a while, and getting them and the providers of these new improved medical treatments for addiction, MAT, medical assisted treatment, getting the treaters, the providers, the frontline groups, and finally the city on board on the same page, all sort of working together in a much more collaborative kind of way is what I enjoy imagining. And then finally, imagine the Pueblos, which have trouble trusting these other municipalities. They've been through so much over so long, and they keep at arm's length as much as they can. Imagine them starting to say, you know, maybe we can now start to really get involved too in some of these ways that are we're seeing our community improve. So that's kind of the vision that we operate under. And I think it's so powerful that it's the reason that things have grown so fast for us. And we're now doing like 7, 8 projects at any given time. And we welcome new people to participate. You don't have to be part of one of our congregations. You don't have to be part of any congregation. What I find periodically is people say, I want to get involved. What would that look like for me? Well, I'll say, let's get together for coffee and let's talk about that. You know, what would work for you? And so a whole lot of people have just kind of joined this team or joined that team, or they only show up for our quarterly meetings because that's best for them. but we'd find a niche for anybody who wants to get involved. And then lastly, what's not on that flyer is that we are doing something we didn't do last winter, and that is a big collection drive for the shelter, for Inside Out Recovery, and for the food bank at McCurdy. And so 9 different congregations have already said they want to participate. It'll run from November 29th to February 1st. There will be boxes at each of the congregations. Some of the congregations will be collecting clothes or clothing items, cloth items, clothes, blankets, sleeping bags. Some congregations will be collecting food and toiletries. And we'll have it set up so that the boxes are being made available to the congregations. We'll deliver the boxes to where they need to go. And if it's going great guns at the end of January, we may well extend it and go through the end of February. So if anybody wants to get involved in that, please let me know. Thanks so much for your time, everybody.
I'm going to bring this around. If you raise your hand, and you can ask some questions. And Tyler, you heard me as well. All that stuff on that table needs to leave with you all. Got it, right? Yes, Dena. Sure.
Thank you. Oh, yes. I just want to very quickly share that I mentioned in my talk that we had a winter essentials program last winter that allowed us to close the encampment. But something that made that really successful was this organization, the Interfaith Coalition on Homelessness, because the donations, that there was some fundraising that was done. Almost $20,000 came to us, and as a result, we were able to vacate people from the property in an emergency scenario because there were so many people, and people were so cold overnight that they were starting fires in their tents to keep warm. Propane tanks with fires, and tents were catching on fire. People got burned. It was tragic. And so we went on an emergency rampage with this emergency case management services to get people off of the property. And we spent a lot of time helping people get into hotels for 4 days, saying to them, there is no time to think about this. Your life is more important than letting you stay here to think about it. So we're going to put you in a hotel for 4 days, and then we're going to put a plan together. That was all possible because of this coalition. Provided supplies, necessary supplies, blankets, cell phones. Oh my gosh, the list is really long, but the Winter Essentials program would not have been successful if we didn't have the support from the coalition as a brand new organization. So thank you.
Laura, I'm coming to you. Sort of. It's not as easy as it looks.
So first I'd like to say it's so wonderful to see Dena and Tyler here discussing this. Some of you know that some of the first collections to go down to the valley took place in the corner over here, where this church put these huge cardboard boxes in the corner, and my little blue Honda Element that everybody recognizes would pull up here just about every Friday and pile stuff to the ceiling and haul it down to the valley. And so when Dena and everybody else who was involved in the opening of the warming center, there was like the first year there was enough toilet paper, paper towels, cleaning stuff, if we wanted mops, anything was put together. So if you think that you can't help, that you don't don't have the financial resources to help, remember that little things like that will make a huge difference. And also, when you hear about people saying, oh, well, they're never open, or there's this or that, and I know we all hear people who say, well, the homeless, blah, blah, blah. Your opportunity, and I find this huge, is to say, well, wait a minute, let's talk about what's happening, what we're doing in our community to help the community in the valley and the homeless people that we have here in our community. And yes, we do have homeless people here in our community. It's just as big to stand up and say, yeah, you know, you might want to think about getting to know what the shelter is like. You might want to talk to Dr. Taylor. You might want to talk to Dena Moscola. Use your mouths. You know, I know you all know people who will say, oh, well, the homeless, I'm tired of seeing the people panhandling, I'm this and that and the other, all dirty. People have all these opinions, and now you're hearing all this wonderful work that's going on here. Let's step it up when we have opportunities to say, now, wait a minute, you know. So I guess my question that would go with all of that. I'm very passionate about this. I was going to Española to meetings that were being held down there before Dena even came on board. They were being held, everybody from the soup kitchen to the director at the hospital were meeting once a month. And at that time, we would never have dreamt that there was going to be something like the coalition here in Los Alamos to support people who are marginalized. So my question is, what do you suggest that people do? Who do you refer people to who have that, who need to have a little attitude adjustment, for want of a better phrase, or need to be able to pass on information in a more efficient manner?
One of the things we talked about early on was very related to that, which is how do we help people in Los Alamos County go from that sort of understanding to that sort of understanding. And so we have a community education team that has been trying to sort of figure out how to put together a program that could be offered all across the county. It might be done, you know, like 2 sessions in White Rock and 2 sessions in Los Alamos, or it might be done in all the different congregations. But it would be to help people understand that their stereotypes aren't accurate, and that this is really much more complex, and move them to a place of more compassion and readiness to get involved. You know, and if 100 people attend and 30 people say, I want to get involved, well, you know, we'll say, come talk to us. We'll help you get more involved. Is there anything you want to add?
And one more thing, and thank you for that, both of you. I think another thing that could be really helpful is come visit us. Come see for yourself. You know, if you want to put a group of people together, give us a call. We'll arrange for a tour, and we'll take you throughout the whole programs, and you'll see where people sleep, where they have their intake. You'll see it all. Our kitchen, that makeshift kitchen that we have. Yeah, you'll see it all. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Tyler and Dena, for all you guys are doing. We really appreciate it. Do what? Oh, okay. Thank you. We really appreciate everything you all are doing. It's just amazing. My question is, can you tell us a little bit more about the hospital services that are coming online down there, the medically assisted treatment programs, and if you have any intensive outpatient or inpatient programs? If so, how many beds, and just what kind of treatment programs are coming online? And I'm assuming it's Presbyterian, right?
Yes, it's at Presbyterian Española Hospital. They're taking their old emergency room, which was sitting empty because they built a new one years back. And so they have a large space, and they've hired 4 addiction medicine doctors, plus nurse practitioners, plus technicians, plus peer support people, counselors, they're going to have this big array of services and support work there. And the space has been completely remodeled. The heartbreak is that they thought they'd be in by July, and because of holdups with state approval for this and certification for that, it hasn't yet happened. They keep thinking any week it's going to happen. It sounds likely it'll happen this month. In addition to them, Porchlight Health, which is all over Colorado, and they've been doing addiction treatment only for years, they have an office in Española. They are very skilled at doing this. El Centro has 10 providers in Española in 2 different offices, and they are all trained now to offer this sort of MAT treatment. I don't know how much of their practices involve that, but they have the training. So, that's when I say there's 15 to 20 people there who can do this kind of training. It's them. And then separately, there's a methadone clinic. And methadone is another way of treating this, and it has its pluses and it has its minuses. The big thing with MAT that makes it so exciting, and when I say MAT, I'm talking mostly about this drug, buprenorphine, is it can be given in weekly injections, it can be given in monthly injections. So imagine somebody's got an addiction disorder, comes in and gets their monthly injection, and their craving for the next month is not a problem. They're not going to have withdrawal. They're going to be able to go on about their life so much better. So it's a big game changer. It's called buprenorphine. And the pill form, which you may have heard of, is Suboxone. But there's now an injectable form, which could be a real game changer.
Is that currently available?
Yes. The pill form Suboxone's been on the market for like 15 years. But there were ways in which prescribing it had obstacles to it that the feds left in place. Those obstacles are now no longer in place. So any primary care person can prescribe Suboxone, but the injectable form has just come out in the last 5 years or so.
Thanks for coming. I have a question about one of the systemic issues that contributed to the homelessness situation. And that was the closure of the 2 apartment buildings. Yeah. Oh. The closing of the 2 apartment buildings in Española. I'm wondering if that was officially Section 8 housing, and if the landlord.
Okay, the apartment complexes, were those being regulated by either the county, state, or federal government? And what recourse the community of Española can take, because I understand it was landlord negligence that led to the closure. That's question number 1. Question number 2 is, can they be purchased and rehabilitated at some point? Because that was a major problem.
Okay. Can everybody hear me? Should I go on the mic? Yeah.
Both.
This has a little bit of the details. Okay, so my break from Pathways was during the time of the closing. I'm familiar with the apartments that closed, but I don't have enough information to share details on some of the questions that you have about the reasons and the recourse. That would be more of a question for the city themselves. But what I can share with you is that there were 2 apartment complexes that closed. Santa Clara was one of them, and then the other one was Vista del Rio. Vista del Rio has been since purchased, and we are working with the owner. It's phenomenal. They have turned the entire complex around. It is cleaner. It is safer. It is now at the point where there are families living on site. They have, 5 or 6 buildings, and there are children playing. They leave their bikes out overnight on their front porch, and it's still there in the morning. it's really turned into a nice community. And it's so good that we've placed some of our clients there. In fact, we are working with them to develop an extension to our Eagle Village program. That's our recovery transitional program. And we are working on using that as a next step after somebody leaves there so people can have even more support. So we see a lot of good things coming from them. And I'm going to say, because I've had permission to say this, the owner is a huge supporter in improving Espanola. Born and raised there, businessman, very smart, huge, huge heart, and he's running for mayor. But you have friends who can.
Anyone else have a question? Okay. My question is there any way to make a shelter like this pet friendly? There's a lot of desire for people to have their animals with them.
So having pets in the shelter is a really important factor. It's a barrier to people. And so when you have people that are on the streets, there's a lot of emotions that kick in, and having an animal is wonderful for support. And we do run into people with pets. We have a no pet rule because we are small. We can bring a service animal in if they have the proper identification. But we have to make sure that we don't have any fights with the animals. We have to make sure that, there's clean conditions, and that our other guests are safe as well. It's something that we're looking at now to see, what can we do? So we work very closely with the Humane Society. They come on our property on a regular basis. They bring dog food, cat food. They do spaying and neutering. They do vaccines. They've been tremendous because we allow pets on our property. Yeah, we have, I think, 3 little cats right now and a couple of dogs. And but we do have some rules because we have to make sure that the animals are contained. We don't want any. We have a big parking lot. We have business that goes on with our tenants. And so we have to make sure that the animals are on leashes. We have lots of rules, but it works out. And for them, everybody's been safe. But we also want to make sure that there's a prevention of diseases. And so we'll see how that goes over time to be able to make that possible. Yeah.
Is that Española humane?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they provide supplies, other supplies as well.
I was going to ask as well, even at the airport, they have service, I guess they're called service dogs, I don't actually know, but they belong to the organization, not to a person, and it kind of just have those, and they're big dogs, but they're trained, and they would probably be maybe a nice thing to have for people to be around, but they don't belong to anyone other than you. And I'm sure there are many at Española Shelter. Pause and pen, yes. Anybody else? Well, thank you both so much for doing this.